Hello, sweet friends, and welcome back for 2 more chapters in our adventure in James and the Giant Peach. Yesterday, we left our characters, James and the other insects that were inside the peach, tumbling down the hillside. They have escaped Aunt Sponge and Aunt Spiker's garden. On the way, the peach, not really they, but the peach rolled over Aunt Sponge and Aunt Spiker. And flattened them like pancakes. I'm not thinking that they are getting back up. So it seems that the world in this story may be rid of two of the most horrible people that existed. So it's like a house falling on someone. So it didn't end well for them, but the insects and James are tumbling around inside, and there's really no stopping this peach. It has rolled across farms, it's scared animals, it's rolled over fences. It rolled in one side and out the other of a chocolate factory. I wonder if it was Mr. Willy Wonka's. So chocolate was all in the streets, up to people's knees. The children were very excited. The grown-ups not so much. And it rolled all the way to the cliffs by the ocean. Did it stop there? It did not. It launched itself off of the cliffs, hovered in midair as it kind of spun in a circle, and then it went down, down, down into the water. Now, because it is so heavy, it did go all the way under the water first, like you probably do when you jump into a swimming pool, but it did come back up, and we left the peach floating peacefully. We do not know what has happened to our characters inside yet. Did they survive the ride? Are they kind of bumped around and bruised up? Let's find out. Chapter 17. At this moment, the scene inside the peach itself was one of incredible chaos. James Henry Trotter was lying bruised and battered on the floor of the room amongst a tangled mass of centipede and earthworm and spider and ladybug and glowworm and old green grasshopper. In the whole history of the world, no travelers had ever had a more terrible journey than these unfortunate creatures. It had started out well enough, with much laughing and shouting, and for the first few seconds, as the peach had begun to roll slowly forward, nobody had minded being tumbled about a little bit. But when it went bump, and the centipede had shouted, "That was Aunt Sponge," and then bump again, and "That was Aunt Spiker," there had been a tremendous burst of cheering all around. But as soon as the peach rolled out of the garden and began to go down the steep hill, rushing and plunging and bounding madly downward, then the whole thing became a nightmare. James found himself being flung up against the ceiling, then back onto the floor, then sideways against the wall, then up to the ceiling again, up and down and back and forth and round, and at the same time, all the other creatures were flying through the air in every direction. And so were the chairs and the sofa, not to mention the 22 boots belonging to the centipede. 42 boots belonging to the centipede. Everything and all of them were being rattled around like peas inside of an enormous rattle that was being shaken by a mad giant who refused to stop. To make it worse, something went wrong with Glowworm's lighting system, and the room was in a pitchy darkness. There were screams and yells and curses and cries of pain, and everything kept going round and round. And once James made a frantic grab for some thick bars sticking out from the wall, only to find out they were a couple of centipede's legs. "Let go, you idiot!" shouted the centipede, kicking himself free, and James was promptly flung across the room into old green grasshopper's horny lap. Twice he got tangled up in Miss Spider's legs, a horrid business, and toward the end, the poor earthworm, who was cracking himself like a whip every time he flew through the air from one side of the room to the other, coiled himself around James's body in panic and refused to unwind. Oh, it was a frantic and terrible trip. But it was all over now, and the room was suddenly very still and very quiet. Everybody was beginning slowly and painfully to disentangle themselves from everyone else. "Let's have some light," shouted Centipede. "Yes," they cried, "light! Give us some light!" "I'm trying," answered the poor glowworm. "I'm doing my best. Please be patient." Then a faint greenish light began to glimmer out of Glowworm's tail, and this gradually became stronger and stronger until it was anyway enough to see by. "Some great journey," the centipede said, limping across the room. "I shall never be the same again," murmured the earthworm. So here is a picture of them all in a tangled mass inside. Look at the boots everywhere. James is sitting on earthworm, old green grasshopper, the furniture's piled up. Poor little glowworm's up there trying to get her light on. There's Miss Spider and Ladybug. Just an awful mess. Let's see what happens. "I will never be the same either," the ladybug said. "It's taken years off my life." "But my dear friends," cried the old green grasshopper, trying to be cheerful. "We're there." "Where?" they asked. "Where? Where is there?" "I don't know," the old green grasshopper said, "but I'll bet it's somewhere good." "We are probably at the bottom of a coal mine," the earthworm said gloomily. "We certainly went down and down and down very suddenly at the last moment. I felt it in my stomach. I still feel it." "Perhaps we are in the middle of a beautiful country full of songs and music," the old green grasshopper said. "Or near the seashore," said James eagerly, "with lots of other children down on the sand for me to play with." "Pardon me," murmured the ladybug, turning a trifle pale, "but am I wrong in thinking that we seem to be bobbing up and down?" "Bobbing up and down!" they cried. "What on earth do you mean?" "You're still giddy from the journey," the old green grasshopper told her. "You'll get over it in a minute. Is everybody ready to go upstairs now and take a look around?" "Yes, yes," they chorused. "Come on, let's go." "I refuse to show myself out of doors in my bare feet," the centipede said. "I have got to get my boots on my feet first." "Oh, for heaven's sake, let's not go through all that nonsense again," the earthworm said. "Let's all lend Centipede a hand and get it over with quickly," the ladybug said. "Come on." So they did, all except Miss Spider, who set about weaving a long rope ladder that would reach from the floor up to the hole in the ceiling. The old green grasshopper had wisely said that they must not risk going out of the side entrance when they didn't know where they were, but must first all go up to the top of the peach and have a look around. And that's pretty smart. The side entrance is the one that James came in. Now, you know and I know that they are floating in the ocean. If they had tried to open the door to the stone or the pit of the peach, what would have probably rushed in? You're right, ocean water, and they possibly could have all drowned. So old green grasshopper is quite a thinker, isn't he? He suggests they go up and look out instead of checking the side. Smart insect. So half an hour later, when the rope ladder had been finished and hung, and the 42nd boot had been laced neatly onto Centipede's 42nd foot, they were all ready to go out. Amidst mounting excitement and shouts, "Here we go, boys! The promised land! I can't wait to see it!" The whole company climbed up the ladder, one by one, and disappeared into a dark, soggy tunnel in the ceiling that went steeply, almost vertically upward. So you know what they're going to see, and I know what they're going to see, but they have no idea. What do you think their reaction is going to be? They wanted to escape the garden, and they have. But are they going to think that they are in a better place or a worse place? All right, let's see how they feel about it. Are you ready? Chapter 18. A minute later, they were all out in the open, standing at the very top of the peach near the stem, blinking their eyes at the strong sunlight and peering nervously around. "What happened? Where are we? But this is impossible. Unbelievable. Terrible. I told you we were bobbing up and down," the ladybug said. "We're in the middle of the sea," cried James. And indeed, they were. A strong current and a high wind had carried the peach so quickly away from the shore that already the land was out of sight. All around them lay the vast black ocean, deep and hungry. Little waves were bibbing against the side of the peach. But how did it happen?" they cried. "Where are the fields? Where are the woods? Where is England?" Nobody, not even James, could understand how in the world a thing like this could have come about. "Ladies and gentlemen," the old green grasshopper said, trying very hard to keep the fear and disappointment out of his voice, "I am afraid that we find ourselves in a rather awkward situation." "Awkward!" cried Earthworm. "My dear old grasshopper, we are finished. Every one of us is about to perish. I may be blind, you know, but that much I can see quite clearly." "Off with my boots!" shouted the centipede. "I cannot swim with my boots on." "You cannot swim at all," cried the ladybug. "Nor can I," wailed the glowworm. "Nor I," said Miss Spider. "None of us three girls can swim a single stroke." "But you won't have to swim," said James calmly. "We are floating beautifully, and sooner or later a ship is bound to come along and pick us up." They all stared at him in amazement. "Are you quite sure that we aren't sinking?" the ladybug asked. "Of course I'm sure," answered James. "Go and look for yourselves." They all ran over to the side of the peach and peered down at the water below. "The boy is quite right," the old green grasshopper said. "We are floating beautifully. Now we must all sit down and keep perfectly calm. Everything will be all right in the end." "What absolute nonsense!" cried the earthworm. "Nothing is ever all right in the end, and well, you know it." "Poor earthworm," the ladybug said, whispering in James's ear. "He loves to make everything into a disaster. He hates to be happy. He is only happy when he is gloomy. Now isn't that odd? But then, I suppose just being an earthworm is enough to make a person pretty gloomy. Don't you agree?" "If this peach is not going to sink," the earthworm was saying, "and if we're not going to be drowned, then every one of us is going to starve to death instead. Do you realize that we haven't had a thing to eat since yesterday morning?" "By golly, he's right," cried the centipede. "For once, the earthworm is right." "Of course I'm right," the earthworm said, "and we're not likely to find anything around here either. We shall get thinner and thinner and thirstier, and we shall all die a slow, grisly death from starvation. I am dying already. I am slowly shriveling up for want of food. Personally, I'd rather be drowned." "But good heavens, you must be blind," said James. "You know very well I'm blind," snapped the earthworm. "There's no need to rub it in." "I didn't mean that," said James quickly. "I'm sorry, but can't you see that—" "See?" shouted the poor earthworm. "How can I see if I am blind?" James took a deep, slow breath. "Can't you realize," he said patiently, "that we have enough food here to last us for weeks and weeks?" "Where?" they said. "Where?" What is James talking about? That's right. They're not being very thoughtful about what they have, are they? "Why, the peach, of course. Our whole ship is made of food." "Jumping Jehoshaphat," they cried. "We never thought of that." "My dear James," said the old green grasshopper, laying a front leg affectionately on James's shoulder, "I don't know what we would do without you. You are so clever. Ladies and gentlemen, we are saved again." So here is the grasshopper with his leg around James's arms. Here's the earthworm. He has on his glasses because he's blind. And there's the ladybug. And then, oh wait, sorry, nope. This is centipede, and this is ladybug over here. What are these things? And what do they eat? "We are most certainly not saved," said the earthworm. "You must be crazy. You can't eat the ship. It's the only thing that's keeping us up." "We shall starve if we don't," said the centipede. "We shall drown if we do," cried the earthworm. Oh dear," said the old green grasshopper. "Now we're worse off than before." "Couldn't we eat just a little bit of it?" asked Mrs. Spider. "I'm dreadfully hungry." "You can eat all you want," James answered. "It would take us weeks and weeks to make any sort of a dent in this enormous peach. Surely you can see that." "Good heavens, he's right again," cried the old green grasshopper, clapping his hands. "It would take weeks and weeks. Of course it would. But let's not go making a lot of holes all over the deck. I think we'd better simply scoop it out of that tunnel over there, the one that we've just come up by. An excellent idea, said the ladybug. Why are you still looking so worried, Earthworm? The centipede asked. What's the problem? The problem is, the Earthworm said, the problem is that there is no problem. Everyone burst out laughing. Cheer up, Earthworm, they said. Come and eat. And they all went over to the tunnel entrance and began scooping great chunks of juicy golden-colored peach flesh. Oh, marvelous, said the centipede, stuffing it into his mouth. Delicious, said the old green grasshopper. Just fabulous, said the glowworm. Oh, my, said the ladybug primly. What a heavenly taste. She looked up at James and she smiled, and James smiled back at her. They sat down on the deck together, both of them chewing away happily. You know, James, the ladybug said, up until this moment, I have never in my life tasted anything except those tiny little green flies that live on rose bushes, aphids. They have a perfectly delightful flavor, but this peach is even better. Isn't it glorious, Miss Spider said, coming over to join them. Personally, I had always thought that a big, juicy, caught-in-the-web blue bottle fly was the finest dinner in the world, until I tasted this. What a flavor, the centipede cried. It's terrific. There's nothing like it. There never has been, and I should know because I personally have tasted all the finest foods in the world. Whereupon the centipede, with his mouth full of peach, and with the juice running down all over his chin, suddenly burst into song. So here's the centipede eating his piece of juicy peach, and he's going to sing us a song. Are you ready? Seems like Centipede really likes to sing. This is his second song so far. I've eaten many strange and scrumptious, delicious dishes in my time, like jellied gnats and dandyprats and earwigs cooked in slime. And mice with rice, they're really nice when roasted in their prime, but don't forget to sprinkle them with just a pinch of grime. I've eaten fresh mud burgers by the greatest cooks there are, and scrambled dregs and stink bugs' eggs, and hornets stewed in tar, and pails of snails and lizards' tails, and beetles by the jar. A beetle is improved by just a splash of vinegar. I often eat boiled slobbages, they're grand when served beside minced doodle bugs and curried slugs. And have you ever tried mosquitoes' toes and swamp fish roes, most delectably fried? The only trouble is they disagree with my inside. It means they give them a tummy ache. I'm mad for crispy wasp stings on a piece of buttered toast and prickled spines of porcupines, and then a gorgeous roast of dragon's flesh, well hung, not fresh. It costs a bucket most, and comes to you in barrels if you order it by post. Do any of those things sound good so far? No, they're not really things that we eat as people. I crave the tasty tentacles of octopi for tea. I like hot dogs. I love hot frogs, and surely you'll agree. A plate of soil with engine oils, a super recipe. I hardly need to mention that it's practically free. For dinner on my birthday, shall I tell you what I chose? Hot noodles made from poodles on a slice of garden hose, and a rather smelly jelly made of armadillo toes. This jelly is delicious, but you have to hold your nose. Now comes, the centipede declared, the burden of my speech. These foods are rare beyond compare, some are right out of reach. But there's no doubt I'd go without 1,000,000 plates of each for one small mite, one tiny bite of this fantastic peach. Everybody was feeling happy now. The sun was shining brightly out of the soft blue sky, and the day was calm. The giant peach, with the sunlight glinting on its side, was like a massive golden ball sailing upon a silver sea. And that is the end of that chapter and the end of our chapters for today. So when our friends stuck their heads out and realized that they were in the middle of the sea or the ocean, they panicked. They didn't know what was going to happen to them. James tries to be the voice of reason and calm everybody down. And once they realize, hey, we're not sinking, we're floating, then Earthworm is like, we have no food, we're going to starve. And James is like, no, you can eat the peach. And then they're like, what if we eat the peach? We want to have a ship. And James is like, it's a giant peach. There's no way we can eat it all. Excuse me, it would take a very long time. So once they realize that, they are calmed down and they're all sitting down and they're finally eating and probably feeling a lot better since they haven't eaten in a day. And they're a little less panicked. They're out in the beautiful ocean on this huge, beautiful peach that's floating and providing food at the same time. I mean, really, what could go wrong? I guess we'll have to wait and find out. So find someone in your family today and tell them the tumbled mess that our characters were in inside the peach, what they saw when they finally got to the top, and how they feel about where they are. All right. Thanks for joining me for more on James and the Giant Peach, and I will see you again next time. Bye.